So today I'm going to study boost graph and try to implement a graph with boost. I'm gonna wait to see if it's streaming first. Put some music for myself. So basically, when I was trying to implement, I was thinking about implementing a graph, and then I was writing my own graph here. But then I realized that when I was studying the data structures, I learned about this library called Boost. And then I found some examples and I also found some Discord to try to help me with the installation because I was having some problems. And then once I got into the Discord, there was a bunch of different resources about different stuff to learn. And that's what I have been doing so far. So there's a lot of stuff to learn. And I'm reviewing these concepts here. I found this really the resource that they shared. Really highly recommend this thing here. It's about the math for the shaders and stuff like that. And I already know most of the math. I'm just reviewing. And it's still like this kind of things are it's kind of difficult because it's very hard to, even though I know the math, it's very hard to memorize exactly at what position you should put like sine and cosine, for example, in the matrix to do these transformations. So I'm just kind of viewing, but I don't expect to be able to know how to do it. And in practice, I think people use the GLM or some other library. I think Raylib uses this other library to do the calculations on matrices and vertices. I just remember that. Forgot to put the chat there. So basically, I found this library. I remembered about this library, so I'm gonna try to implement the graph using the library instead of doing my own because I think that makes a lot more sense. Since it's probably one of the best libraries on C++, and a bunch of people spend a bunch of time building it. So, and the way that the thing that is kind of annoying to me, and I thought about this when I was building the front end as well, that it makes a lot more sense that the best graph data structure to use, the best way to build a graph, is not to build a class like this, but to build. I was thinking about using structs and vectors to keep the data, but the way that they do it is the main two ways is either with an adjacency list or adjacency matrix. And the way that the adjacency list works is that you have a list, and then each item on the list is going to be the node and its neighbors, I think. So I'm not really sure what it is exactly, if it is a pointer to another array that has the neighbors or whatnot, but the matrix is going to be just a matrix of the nodes. And then the value of the places are going to be a Boolean value that says if the two nodes have an edge or not. So it makes a lot more sense and it's like a lot faster. But the annoying thing is that if you want to store more information about the nodes, which I'm gonna have to do, for example, the label, the color, and stuff like that, then it's kind of annoying because it feels a little bit decoupled, I think. So the way that they do it, I think, is by, like you can specify here, and this is another thing that I was kind of confused about, but I clarified a little bit just now or yesterday. But the way that they do it, I think, I'm not 100% sure, is that they create another data structure, which is a map, and then the map is gonna map the node ID or the edge ID, and then whatever property you have. So in this case here, I found some examples that I put on this file here, and then I'm just pretty much using these ones. I copied some of this stuff here. But the way that they do it is just by creating these two structs here. This has the vertex data and then this the edge data, and then you have to specify here. And the thing that was kind of confusing to me is that this is a template, and this is the class that is using, so it's boost, and then it's calling the adjacency list. So this thing here is going to initialize the class. It's just defining this type as this name here. So every time I put this name, like here, I'm initializing the class. And what was kind of confusing to me is that what is the relationship between these templates and the way that the class is structured? But now I think I clarified a little bit more, and I think it's just that anytime you put some of the name on the class, it's just gonna replace whatever you put here. So like basically the way that they put it here, they declare, the first value is pretty much gonna be the out edge list, which is this one here that the example is specifying. I think you can choose other values, and then the other there is a vertex, then says whether or not the graph is directed, and all of these values are initialized here on this template. So they have default values here, each one, I think. So if you don't specify, it's just gonna go with the value. And I think that what matters is the order you put there. So whatever order you can put whatever you think you want there, I think. And then throughout the class, they just put these names here. And then whenever this name shows up, it's just gonna replace the name with whatever you pass to the class. So in this case, it's a vertex property, and I'm passing this struct, so it's just gonna replace throughout the class this vertex property with in my case, the vertex data. But it is kind of confusing to me. And I think it's because I learned with JavaScript and Python, so I'm not very used to doing stuff with types. And I think I'm gonna spend some time as well studying this library here to try to understand how it works. So far, it's pretty much like I said, you initialize the graph, then it's just gonna be an adjacency list. The thing that I don't like that much, based on the examples, is that like he adds the nodes with calling this function and just a graph, and this is the stuff that I don't like because it feels kind of weird, like. Because what I imagine this function is doing is just putting another value on the array. But then to think about the graph, like how I'm going to structure the graph and the edges and stuff like that. Like I have to initialize the graph first, then I have to create the data for each node, and then I have to remember which node is connected to that data. And this is the reason why I think I like the struct more, because then it seems like everything is more compact on its own thing. So after you initialize, you can get all the values and the ID like is connected with each other. But here the IDs are separate from the other data. So this is the thing that I'm kind of struggling to think about, like what is the best way to do it. And I didn't like the documentation very much. It's kind of confusing to me as well. So I guess the only way is to just look at the source code and try to figure out. The template starts getting very confusing once there is a situations like this where there's a bunch of templates on top of templates and stuff like that. I just realized that puts. Hey, what's up? So it's passing the graph. I assume this type just means the graph. And then it converts whatever passed here to be this type here. And then it access this property. It's kind of confusing because I imagine that this is probably going to be for more than one type of graph. That's the reason why they did it like this. So the graph, that's the adjacency list, and the adjacency matrix is probably going to have this stuff as well. So just calling based on the name, I imagine is resizing the size of the array or whatever vector. And it's calling this stuff here. So maybe the best thing to do is just to look at the class, the JCC list, and go from there. I have to change this as well. Just gonna put label. Not sure if it's bad she puts both of them. I'm gonna do it like this first. Both of them label the name. So I don't think I need distance. In the beginning, I'm gonna copy the functions that I had from the other example to create random points. Or I have to put the position. And then I'm just gonna try to create a random number of nodes and then connect them in a random way and put the positions in a random way as well. It's better to be a float. Or color as well. What else? It puts weight. I think I'm gonna comment this out, then I think about this later. That's kind of the annoying thing about this now, is that I'm not really sure, because I have to do the other part, which is to go back and study the project from Python, to understand how I wrote down a bunch of stuff here as well, because I was thinking about this. Maybe I should read here. Get data from whatever we want to visualize, parse tree from Python grammar, for example. I was thinking about what if I want to get a bunch of different graphs. So the way that I'm imagining is that I'm going to get the data from somewhere, then I build the graph. Then after I build the graph, this is something that I'm not 100% sure what is the best way to do it, but I'm imagining for now at least that I'm going to get the data, and then based on the data of the graph, I'm going to probably loop over the edges or something like that. And then for each edge, I call the function to draw the shaders. And then I was thinking about, like, it's probably better to get the shaders from 3JS, because I remember studying 3JS source code. Then I remember I found some files that had the shaders. And then I was thinking about it's probably better to start from that position, because then I don't have to think about how I'm going to code the shaders. And the way that I think it works is that you have to, there's these functions here. So the way that I'm imagining to do, and from some examples that I saw, people create classes for shaders, but I'm not 100% sure if it's worth it to do that like that or not. So the way that I'm thinking about doing now is just getting the shaders from the 3JS project. That's and I saved the source code, and I know where the files are at. So I'm thinking about just copying the shader code from 3JS. Then maybe I should do a class for each one as well. Like, just try to translate the classes from 3JS to C++, and then just basically do the same logic. And then for each shader, I just load like this. And then I have to think about where I'm going to put the functionality for implementing the shaders. Because the way that I think it works is that you load the shader, and then somewhere here you call a function to draw the shader. And then the only thing that is going to change from each frame is going to be the position, which is going to be based on the physics calculation, which is going to be a Barnsut solver that I'm going to get from another project. So, but in the beginning, I think I'm just going to get the positions. So it's just going to be a static thing. Yeah, because obviously it's easier. So like but because I'm not going to use the graph from the way that I was thinking about doing, I'm going to use the boost graph. Then I was thinking about what is the best way to connect the graph with the shaders, which I'm still not 100% sure. But the way that I'm imagining now is that I'm going to create a function, which is going to be this great graph. And then inside of this great graph, I'm gonna have some control flow that is gonna be based on an enum, and there's gonna be a switch statement, and then based on whatever switch, I create a function that draws whatever graph it is based on the data that I'm receiving. So I have to receive some data that's gonna either come from the parse tree from Python or whatever else I wanna visualize. Then from that data, I have to call this function, functions from boost to create the graph, and then return the graph. The pointer to the graph, and that's the reason why I put new here, because it has to be on the heap, so it doesn't get discarded once the function is over. So I'm returning a pointer to the heap that has the graph, and then here I'm gonna do a switch. It's gonna be graph type or data type, or data, something like that. And then I receive an enum there. But I'm not gonna start with this, obviously. I'm just gonna do as simple as possible in the beginning. Then based on that, I create the graph, and then I have to think about, this is kind of what I'm struggling, because it's kind of hard to think about what is the best way to connect everything. So to set up the graph part, the shader, and the physics, and which thing should I put where? That makes sense. Hey, thanks, man. What language did you learn first? JavaScript. Unless you consider HTML a language, but yeah. HTML, CSS, and then JavaScript. So I think here I'm just gonna get the functions that I had from the other project. Oh, no. I don't remember. Oh, it was here, I think. Yeah, these ones. Maybe I deleted them. No, this here. Oh, position has to be a vector, not a. Yeah. I'm gonna copy this. Probably velocity as well and force. I'm gonna have to put. But this stuff I'm gonna see based on. Already put vector here. I'm gonna see. Oh no, this is from the other one. I'm confusing the show. Yeah. I'm gonna have to see from the other project how he does it, the physics calculations. And then I'm gonna copy from the example, I think. So this is the thing that is not clear. It's kind of annoying to me, because like I can do it on the example, obviously, but just like based on the way that he did it here, I don't know what is the best way to do this. And also because it's C++, so it's kind of confusing to me, because I'm not used to thinking about the memory. So obviously I can loop over, because the problem here is that like the way that I'm gonna know what is the best way to do the graph is gonna depend on the data that I'm getting. So in order for me to know that, I have to know the other parts. So like, but for here, for example, obviously I can like do a loop and then just do an arbitrary number, hundreds. But it's, yeah, I don't know. So I guess this is probably the thing that I don't know is at what points should I move on to. I think I'm just gonna try to do like the most basic thing first. So just initialize. I'm gonna try. Obviously, I'm not really sure. This is kind of the problem. Is it's hard for me to think about the connection between the graph, the building the graph, and putting the data of the properties on the graph. So based on the example, the way that he does here, it just adds a bunch of stuff to the graph, and then you can add edges based on the ID you put, I think. So each time that you put this, it probably returns it returns an integer like it is here, which I think is the node ID. So it's just going to be a list of integers that contains the node IDs, and then each node ID is going to have. I'm actually not really sure if it's it's probably a list of pointers to the neighbors. I don't know for sure. But I know the IDs are going to be just numbers, which makes sense. But then the question is like, how do you, at what point is the best to capture the information of the connections of the graph? Because the thing that was kind of like confusing to me is that if I have to structure the data before I do the graph, then what's the point of using the boost graph in the first place? Like if I'm gonna have to structure everything to structs of vectors before, just so I can pass the data to create boost, then what's the point of using boost if I already have the graph later? So I'm not really sure like how to go about this. But I guess one thing that I can do now in the beginning, I'm probably just gonna do this. Try to see if I can do this, and then I just do some random way to connect the edges. Oh, I don't have the. Oh, I have to pass the graph like this. Not sure what the problem is here. Also, I'm gonna have to look up how to. I'm thinking about doing the name based on the value here, so I'm gonna have to look it up how to insert. But I'm not really sure what's the problem. Oh, it's because of the way that I put there. I changed the formats. I'm doing the int here first because of alignment or padding on the struct. So I don't remember really well the nuances of it, but I know that's it's gonna like there's a breaking point for each byte that the struct is gonna take, and if you depending on the way you arrange the things is gonna be like if you put bytes that are not aligned with whatever padding you have, like whatever size the struct separates things, then it's just gonna be not optimized. So, but I'm not really sure if this way is the correct way. I guess one thing that I can do, because there is an example where he initializes. The question is, will I know the size of how many nodes the graph has just based on the data before or not? Because I think that a better way would be to maybe I can just initialize based on the size of whatever data I have. And then as I go over the data, I just I do some loop or something over the data that I receive, and then as I do that, but actually that doesn't make sense. Unless I can initialize in the way that he does here. So I think that what this does is creates a graph with 5 items. So yeah, I'm gonna try like this. So I just pass. I put I'm gonna put an argument that says like the size of. This is the kind of thing because it really depends on what kind of data I'm gonna receive. And then the question becomes is like if I wanna reuse the same function to put whatever to get data from many different sources if I want to, based on whatever arguments I pass through the main function. How do I structure? But I guess I'm gonna break this down. So whatever functionality I put here is gonna be inside of the switch, and then from this one I just receive the. But then all of them are gonna have to receive the same arguments though. That's the problem. So the question is, I'm thinking about putting the size of the whatever data I'm going to receive. And then I can use that size to initialize the graph here. 'Cause that would make it easier because then I can loop over the size of the nodes. And then for each node on the graph, I just initialize based on I just link the ID with whatever data I have from. But this is the whole thing that is kind of confusing to me. I don't know what's the best way to go about it. Because if I have to create the data structure when I'm getting the data, then what's the point of using Boost? Because I'm gonna already have the data formatted in the other way. So the only way that makes sense is that if I receive the data in a way that is not formatted, but then like how do I capture, how I'm gonna know the, maybe it's still worth it because of it is more optimized on the calculation, on the physics engine. So it doesn't matter that I have to create the main question is the edges. It's like, so probably what I'm gonna do is capture some relationship between different stuff. The parse tree is the first one that I think I'm gonna do. So it's probably gonna be just the parse tree, obviously. So the relationship between the different nodes. But then I'm gonna have to capture the edges as I capture the data. I think that's the problem because there are two different points. They are separated. Hey, thank you. So I don't think I can avoid because they're fundamentally two different processes. So I don't think I can avoid. And this is another question though, because if I do it the way that I'm thinking here, I'm probably gonna have to create several different functions, I think. So it's not gonna work if I just put the switch. Because in order to be able to create a generic function that is gonna this is gonna work for multiple different cases, I would have to know what kind of data I'm gonna need for all of them. I would have to create a standard for the data that I'm gonna receive, regardless of what kind of graph I wanna build. Maybe I should. I think this is exactly the problem that I was thinking about. So maybe I should read what I wrote there. So the issue is that the way that I build the graph here, it feels like I have to couple the process of creating the graph with the process of extracting the data, because they are the same thing. And because I'm gonna use Boost, it becomes more difficult to think about how to create the edges as I get the data, because I don't know what's the process of getting the data looks like. So I guess in the beginning I can just do something like this and then just to see. I should probably build a simple graph, then I build the shaders. Like once I build the shaders and everything else and close the cycle, then I go back and think about this stuff again once I figure out how to extract the data. That's probably the best thing to do for now. Function to parse data into Boost graph. How to make generic functions so it handles different kinds of data. One option would be to accept a boolean and make a switch inside a function to call different functions depending on what kind of data it is. Where's the variance? All graphs will be made out of the same struct properties for vertices and edges. Main difference between them will be the connections and labels. Also possible the weights and radials. Oh, also radials, I forgot about this. Probably should be unsigned. Yeah, so this is what I was thinking about. Is for all of them, the structs I'm gonna use are the same, which are these properties here. So the main variance is what kind of data these properties receive for depending on which thing I'm gonna do. Problem is we are going to have to create structs to extract data, then convert those structs into Boost graph. So it would make more sense to mix the process of creating the graph and extracting the data. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. But if we do that, then they will become coupled, which doesn't seem very good. Maybe a good way would be the switch. The functions accepts type verb. The thing that I forgot here, I think, is this thing about the arguments. 'Cause unless I can make the functions that get the extracted data should don't accept any arguments, or I can just use templates as well. But that feels kind of it feels like it's gonna be more complex than it should be, because then it becomes like this whole thing about like the more variance I have on the types of data that I'm gonna use to extract the types of functions that I'm gonna use to extract the data, then the more complicated the templates are gonna be, which I wanna avoid. So initialize the graph in the beginning, then goes through the switch, which calls a function depending on the enum variable. The function will receive the graph and parse data and update the graph. Finally returns the graph. But maybe this is the way. So it just puts an enum. So the way that I'm thinking about it is probably to do the enum, and then just put a template variable to specify the. I'm not really sure if I should put the template on this here, on the declaration. Something like this. And here I'll put enum as well. Or I should put first. Maybe this way is the best way. Then it doesn't matter what kind of data I pass, because it can be any type. And obviously, I'm not gonna need this for now. Because I'm just gonna do this simple example, but yeah, I think it doesn't matter now. I should probably the best thing to do is just probably to create like a simple graph, and then I think about this stuff later. So create a simple graph, then I do the shaders, try to create a visualization with the random graph. Then after I do all of that, then I can think about I should solve the physics first, then I go back and think about this generic thing, because I'm gonna have to focus on extracting the parse tree, and then being like what I'm gonna try to separate them to become easier to think about. So like separate the projects first. I'm probably gonna create another project just to parse which is gonna be pretty much the Python project already. I'm just gonna try to change that project so I can extract the data as a graph format. So for that part, I can like separate them, and I'm gonna have to probably create another data structure to put everything to put the parse tree that this one is gonna receive. But I do think that's probably worth it to use boosts here because it's probably better to. I'll think about this later. So the best way I think is probably to just create a bunch of uh, nodes first without having. I'm just gonna call this function. And then how can I'm gonna try to do some random connection here. So the way that I imagine it's gonna work is just gonna add from 0 to whatever length you put here, the nodes. So the ID is gonna be from 0 to whatever. So is there a way to? So I'm just gonna add everything first, create a graph, then I just put the labels and everything else later. Or maybe I should do it on the same loop. I think that makes more sense. Maybe doing everything on the same loop makes more sense. So yeah, let me go back. I have to see if this is gonna work or not. So I'm just gonna put I here as the. I'm not sure if it's gonna complain if I do like this. So I'm gonna ask ChatGPT how do to put the variables inside of strings, if it is even possible on C++. I'll have to add. I'm just gonna do whatever is easiest. So if this works, and I'll think about it later, obviously. The colors, it probably has to be in enum as well, but then I don't know. Maybe if I create another struct or a map. This is kind of like the problem. the reason why it's hard because it's gonna depend on the data, obviously. So it's not very clear on my mind how to connect the extraction of the data and the way that I'm gonna structure the data so that I can pass the information here. Because I think that on the way that it accepts on Raylib with the function that I was using before, which I think I'm not gonna use, I'm gonna use the shaders. That's another thing. I was using in the previous time that I did this, I was using a function from Raylib itself to draw the spheres, this one. Then the color, I think it is from the color was a struct. So maybe if I just copy, yeah, but the problem is that the color is gonna depend on the whatever ways I put the shader, I create the shaders. But I think it's gonna be the way they do it on Raylib is with a struct, and I think the struct is a RGB values. So that's probably the way that I'm gonna do it because they use OpenGL under the hood. So if I'm gonna do the shaders, it's probably gonna be very similar. I still have to think about though. I'm just gonna put blue for now, then I think about this later. This label, color. Yeah. And the other thing I'm not really sure is that I think that it is gonna work. It's just gonna create a new object each time for this thing, and then after it creates the thing, it doesn't matter anymore. But I'm not really sure though. I think that this way works, and the way that I access the information is by using the functions later to get the attributes from the graph. Position actually has to be based on these values here. I'm gonna do it the way that they were doing here. And this is the color from Raylib. I'm gonna keep it the way that I have now. I'll think about this later. So probably the easiest way to do it is just to put if I greater than true, then I just connect them like sequentially. So I have to get nodes from graph. Get previous nodes. I have to initialize the So I'll be right back. I'm gonna try to see. I'm gonna get from the examples. See. So get two nodes based on the value of I, then connect them, and then I'm gonna return the graph and see. Then on the other function, I'm gonna try to loop over the graph. And then for each time that I loop, I just call this function here, just pass the position from the. Yeah, I'm gonna see if there is another function to loop over the graph. I think there is based on what I've seen before. There's an iterator function here somewhere. Then use that function iterator over the graph and then just call these methods. Then later on, obviously, I'm gonna see if how can I do that with the shaders instead of this function here. But I'll be right back. The biggest questions I have is are about how to organize everything and what is the best place to put the shaders. And also, I don't remember. I think it's not very clear on my mind. The graph pipeline is clear on my mind. What it isn't clear is how to write everything and how the data, and how to structure the shaders and the data, the connection between them. I imagine that the only thing that is going to change on the data each frame is going to be the positions, which is going to be based on the physics calculation. And then everything else should be the same. So I think that stuff should be probably on the shader. But then, like, what is the best way to create the shader classes? That's the thing that I'm not 100% sure. think they both have to be floats. Which language? C++? Hi. I think that's probably all I have to do to add the edge. Uh, I wouldn't say I've learned for sure because I haven't built anything with it. But probably I learned C. I think I forgot. I think it's Code Academy. Code Academy. Like a very long time ago, I did. I think a little bit. Some of exercises from them, and then some exercises from another website, like 6 months ago or something like that. So I already had kind of an idea of how everything works, and I already knew other languages. But then recently, once I really started like learning, probably about 2 weeks or something like that, maybe a little bit more. I don't know for sure. Actually, more, probably 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, or around that time, I think. I read like probably probably around 20 books, like at 3x speed, but I didn't pay too much attention because I was just trying to see like what is the overall thing. I'm trying to find the best book, and then I watched probably hundreds of videos already about all sorts of things. So I probably around a month if I remember correctly, but I'm not really sure. So like what else should I do here? I think that's pretty much it for creating the graph. It is random graph initially. So I should try to compile this and see if it's gonna break everything. Okay, great. And there's a bunch of stuff wrong here. Position identifier not found. Hmm. This error I don't understand very well because he's doing exactly the same thing here. But maybe I have to pass as this. That would make a lot of sense. Oh, so he's doing this subscript with this v1. That's one of the examples. But here he's adding directly here. VD. So I don't see the difference. So what is here? Or probably is something that is used that I don't understand very well. One of the types, probably. I'm gonna run again because I'm sure some of the mistakes are gonna be solved. But probably there's gonna be some still. And this is from the other functions that I had before as well. I think I'm just gonna ignore these warnings for now. The red ones, obviously, I can't ignore. So I think that the problem is the arguments that I'm passing to the functions, but I don't understand why. At least one of the problems. The other ones I still also don't get it. It's obviously coming from one of that class there, this stuff here. And I assume that is on the type conversion or something from these functions here, but I don't understand what is the problem. If I put the names here, and just specify which thing I'm initializing. Could be this thing here as well. Hmm. It doesn't make sense to me that it could be the plus here, but I don't see why that would be the case. I'm thinking about whether or not it's worth it to try to create another variable here, then I make this equal to the variable, then pass the variable here, but it's kind of annoying to do that. Obviously, the other thing that I can do is just simplify everything. Maybe it's because of the way that I'm initializing this. The problem is if I don't use the new, then it's gonna be a problem too, because I'm not gonna be able to return. And I guess I can try that just to see if this is the error or not. Or maybe it's because of the way that but if I don't do this, I think it's just gonna complain. Maybe not. Let's see if it works now. So it has to be the way that I'm initializing here. And this is a problem though. So what I can do is just try to do it like this, and then I just to see if it works, then I think about it. And maybe I should read the documentation again, but like it's kind of confusing to me. So probably the best thing to do is just gonna spend a bunch of time studying the source code, but I wanna avoid doing that. So I can study all the other stuff that I have to study. Or maybe it's because of the other stuff that I have here. I think it doesn't matter that I'm not calling anything here. I think I'm not even calling this function. But I think it doesn't matter because I'm still including the file. Let me run again. I'm pretty sure the example is working because I tested last time. So it's something to do with the way that I'm doing the other stuff, I think. Which is very annoying because these errors don't help very much. Mm. Oh, it's probably because of the scope. But I'm pretty sure I remember seeing this, like people doing this, like making. I'm pretty sure that this is supposed to work. Also, it's a problem with this. Maybe if I initialize here and then I add or make it equal later. I don't understand this very much as well. Like, why make this thing here? I guess what I can try to do here is just to initialize, then do the same thing for everything. So ID, cosine. Oh, I forgot the radios. It might be a problem because I'm using the same thing here. I'm not really sure. Now, these kinds of things are gonna be annoying until I get used to the right way to do things. Because one thing looking at other people doing it, it's another thing to because I already have the habits from the other languages on the way that I used to do things. So types and this kind of dealing with memory is the thing that I'm gonna struggle the most in the beginning. So I guess I'm gonna try to put the like this stuff here to see if it works or if something else. It could be this thing here as well. I'm gonna do this first, then if it doesn't work, I comment this out. And so let me comment this one. Hmm. And so now I don't understand. Maybe it's because like, it doesn't make sense to me. It could be that I'm declaring here and but that wouldn't make any sense, I think. Maybe it does. I don't understand why I'm getting. Let me erase everything. See if I still get the error. Hmm. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So that should be coming from somewhere else, maybe. That would make. Maybe it does make sense. Because I'm 100% sure that it was working when I was trying. I just put this function here last time that I did this. Should check to see if it's working or not. I think I'm gonna delete everything that I added here and then just try to run again to see. Because it doesn't make any sense to me. It's not working at all. Pretty sure I copied this stuff here as well. Yeah. Hmm. Oh, what's going on? I'll try to delete, but it doesn't make any sense because I didn't do anything else different. And now I erase everything that I put there. Maybe it's just because I... Yeah, let me remove this stuff from here. But I don't see why that would... It could be the header here. I don't think that's the problem though. Yeah, maybe this... I'm just gonna delete this stuff, try to build again. It's probably not gonna work though. It's really weird. Because I didn't change anything, so I have no idea what's going on. The only thing that I changed was the stuff that I added now. And before that, I'm 100% sure it was working. So maybe deleted something by mistake on these files. Or maybe I deleted. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is just spend a bunch of time going over the source code, try to understand what's going on. It shouldn't be the way that I'm adding here. The weird thing is that I didn't change anything, so I'm 100% sure that it worked when I was calling this function. So maybe it's something with the compiler, because I didn't change anything. The problem is that, like, if I have to look at the source code, it's gonna take me a bunch of hours, probably, and I don't want to do that right now, because I want to finish the other stuff first, then I go back to this stuff, then, like, once I finish all the other stuff, then I have to focus on this. And it's pretty fucking annoying, not gonna lie. Maybe it's because I added the yeah, but I made it work after I added the Raylib thing, like the other version of Raylib. What if I so let me what if I do this? It's still gonna complain because I'm still including the directory here. It seems like it's something related to OpenGL, but like obviously the warnings are from the boost. And maybe something with the OpenGL version. But I think that it isn't OpenGL actually because it's just the name of the executable that I put there. It's probably with it has to be something related to the boost. So based on the errors, the thing that I think is not working is the type of the graph. The type of the graph doesn't have the function that's calling there, but it doesn't make any sense because I didn't change the example and I just erased everything that I put new here. Maybe it could be that the imports, maybe here, but I don't see why that would be a problem though. And the problem is on the file from the example. Hmm. Oh, it's because of the. Maybe it's because of this, but that wouldn't make any sense. I don't think that's the issue though. So it's probably one of these functions that call this other function, and then something's going on with the templates. And there's also Chu. Did I change this? Thing is, I don't remember where I got this from. I think it was from a video, but that wouldn't make any sense either. Let me delete. Maybe the example that I was using is the other one. And then because there's Shu with the same name, but that wouldn't make sense either. I don't know. I think I'm gonna stop here and try to figure this out off stream. Because I didn't change anything and then out of nowhere it's not working. And I have no idea. It's gonna take me several different hours probably. So what I'm gonna do is probably finish this, reading this book here. Then once I finish this and I also have this playlist here, then I will spend time. I'm probably gonna read the documentation again. I didn't like the documentation very much because it's kind of confusing to me. So what I'm probably gonna have to do is just spend a bunch of time going over the source code. I'm gonna try to see if I can find where I found this code again, and then see if I can copy again. Because I'm pretty sure I didn't change anything and it was working before, so I have no idea why. Obviously something related to the templates here, and but yeah. So probably next time, if depending on how long it takes me to finish all of this stuff, I come back and then just spend a bunch of time looking at the source code. But I'm gonna